Wherever you look, it's the Formula One season boiling over. Alonso versus Massa on the way to the podium. McLaren versus Ferrari on the way to the Court of Appeal. Now, in uncompromising fashion, it's Alonso versus Hamilton. Judged to have blocked his teammate in qualifying yesterday, the world champion is relegated down the grid. Ron Dennis angry, but Lewis on pole after another day of learning what this strange world of Formula One is all about.
You sort of learn what can happen in motorsport, who you can trust, who you can't, whether you believe people or whether you don't. And there's so much politics going around. It's really easy for that politics to affect you and your job. And the most important thing for me is just to focus on my job.
And there's plenty more to come from a very reflective Lewis Hamilton as we welcome you to Budapest for this Hungarian Grand Prix, the 11th round of the Formula One World Championship, and yet another controversial twist in this extraordinary season. Good afternoon. It was 11:35 last night that the stewards announced their decision to relegate Fernando Alonso 5 places down the grid for his offence of impeding Lewis Hamilton at the climax of yesterday's qualifying. They also announced that they will be preventing McLaren from scoring any Constructors' Championship points at this race, but that's something that McLaren are appealing against. Now, this is the race that we welcome the former Formula One World Champion Damon Hill to the ITV commentary team in the absence of Martin Brundle. I don't know what you and Mark make of the events of the last 24 hours, but Damon, the politics in this sport are as lively as ever, aren't they?
Well, you know, I think that you can take it as politics, but actually what happened yesterday was necessary. I think that Fernando Alonso was seen to be holding up another driver, albeit his teammate, and he was penalised for it. So I think that was a fair decision. But we know that there are also politics going on with Ferrari and McLaren, so there's always spice, isn't there, in this show?
And it's also a question mark, posed against the integrity of McLaren, and that really hurts within this team, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and McLaren are very big on that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, from what I can see, I'm not so sure that the punishment fits the crime, Steve, and that's what we really have to look at.
Well, it was a very reflective Lewis Hamilton that we talked to last night, because really it was his defiance of team instructions in that last session of qualifying that triggered the whole problem within the team, and it also prompted a very angry exchange with the team boss Ron Dennis. Ted Kravitz now can take us through the whole timetable of events in this controversy.
McLaren say this was a case of cock-up rather than stitch-up. It all started when Hamilton, who was heavier with fuel, deliberately disobeyed an instruction to let the lighter Alonso past so that the Spaniard could have the chance to go for pole. So when Alonso came in early for his first shot at pole position, he was already angry with Hamilton. To make sure Fernando was fed back onto a clear track, Alonso's engineer gave him a countdown to leaving the pit that was signalled to the Spaniard by lollipop man Pete Vale. On that first attempt then, Alonso was logically slower than Hamilton because Lewis was on the soft tyres and by staying out in front, he had burned off one more lap of fuel. So with his chances of pole slipping away, a still wound up Alonso pits for one last attempt. He gets another traffic countdown, this time for 20 seconds. That countdown ends with 1 minute 48 seconds remaining. The lollipop goes up, but Alonso waits while he has an unusual and untimely argument with his engineers about why he hasn't been given soft tyres. By now it's too late for Hamilton. The clock confirms there's not enough time for Lewis to get out and set a final lap time. McLaren have messed up the management of their drivers, and the stewards judged that by having this argument about the tyres, Alonso unnecessarily impeded his own teammate. Ron Dennis is furious. This, for the record, is Alonso's version of events.
We always stop, we wait for the countdown in the radio and we go. Sometimes it's 10 seconds, sometimes 45 seconds like the first stop of today, sometimes 10 or 15 like the second, but I think the calculation was wrong because my teammate didn't complete the lap. and I crossed the line with 2 or 3 seconds. So it was really, really tight. And, you know, these things unfortunately happened today to us.
So you're saying that your engineer was giving you a countdown on the radio as to when you should leave the box?
Yes.
Did you see Lewis was behind you?
Yes.
And did you see Pete Vale, your chief mechanic, waving to you to leave the box?
Yes.
So you took the words of your engineer rather than Pete Vale telling you to leave?
Yes, because sometimes the mechanic, when they see another car behind, they try to change the tires and go. But I have the radio 5, 4, 3, 2, so I wait for the 0.
Okay, it's unfortunate then some people jump to the conclusion that you did it deliberately.
I know, because I think the TV shows that and shows Ron not very happy, but I think he's not happy with the engineers. They do the calculation or whatever.
Not only did the stewards reject Alonso's explanations, they also found McLaren's actions were prejudicial to the interests of the sport and docked them their constructors' points from this race, a decision McLaren have now appealed. So with Fernando's 5-place grid penalty, Lewis Hamilton is now on pole with Nick Heidfeld alongside. Alonso starts 6th. Another man in trouble with the stewards is Giancarlo Fisichella, who was docked 5 places for blocking Yamamoto's spiker. Felipe Massa starts 14th after Ferrari forgot to refuel him before his last qualifying run.
So the stewards were certainly busy yesterday, Damon. You feel, though, it's absolutely correct that Lewis Hamilton finds himself on pole position?
Well, I don't feel that it's absolutely correct, because what we'd like to see is a clean fight and an opportunity. We'll never know now whether Lewis could have gone out on softer tyres and gone faster than Fernando Alonso. So what would have been nice would have he'd had a chance to move forward and get his tyres, but we'll never know now. But that is, I think the stewards have done the right thing in that they have intervened in what they've seen as it looked like it was an obstacle that prevented Lewis from doing a lap.
What does yesterday, Mark, tell us about Fernando Alonso?
It tells us that he's a very focused individual. It shows us that he's prepared to go to any lengths to get another world championship, his 3rd world championship. And I think it also tells us that he's a very strong individual within the team, and he's quite prepared to, to stake his claim and tell everybody that he's number 1.
It also tells us a bit that maybe the honeymoon is over within McLaren. There were some very angry words exchanged between Lewis Hamilton and Ron Dennis. I know Lewis feels rather uncomfortable about that, but this happens in Formula 1, doesn't it?
Yeah, the problem is, Steve, you get emotions flying high. Yes, there's a game plan set out in the first place, and everybody should adhere to that. In the heat of the moment, all of that goes out the window and it changes. And several people have obviously been involved in something which didn't go according to plan. A few things have been said. I'm sure they can get patched up, but the main thing is what we're all about here is Sunday afternoon and let's go racing. What Damon says, we're disappointed now because we don't get to see Lewis Alonso straight fight down to turn 1.
Well, yesterday evening, once he'd calmed down, Lewis Hamilton talked about his own reasons why he defied team instructions in yesterday's final qualifying.
At the end of the pit lane, they said, when you exit the garage, let Fernando pass. And this is something they had agreed, the team had agreed, and not really giving me an explanation exactly why. And I just thought, okay, I'll do it. But at the point when we were at the end of the pit lane, there was me, Fernando and Kimi. So I was thinking, okay, well, I can't let him pass at the first corner because I will lose my position to Kimi. And so I thought, okay, well, I've got to make a split decision here. I just thought, let's go for it. If I'm quick enough, he'll keep up with me and we'll both make an extra lap. He backed off. I was told and told and told again, let Fernando pass. But he was off in the distance and I just got on with my job. And obviously I'm in a lot of trouble with my boss, but Ron's he was obviously extremely mad at me at the time. I don't know if he is now, but when you don't obey an order from your team boss who gave you the opportunity, it's a difficult situation, but at the end of the day you have to stand up to what you believe and how you feel, and at the time I took the decision, and that's just the way it went.
So do you feel within the team context you might be wrong, but from an individual point of view you're standing by your rights?
Absolutely. I did say to the team, I said okay, they explained it all and I said okay, well, I apologise. The decision I took when I was out there, I was out on my own, and I apologise, I was in the wrong, won't happen again. But I still, you have to stick to your gut instinct, and that's what I did.
Damon, there are occasions when a Formula 1 driver has to make up his own mind about things and maybe go against team instructions. Was this one of those from Lewis's point of view?
I think we've seen it over the years where certain drivers have been applauded for their independent spirit and their clear thinking to do what is right for them, what they feel is right for them. So I think Lewis has got a good point. I think it is an issue. But the team objective cannot cloud the liberty, if you like, of the driver to be able to go out there and race in the way that he wants to. And this is where we're getting into a bit of a difficult area. I'm sure it's clear in the contract or whatever, but something needs to be discussed. And somewhere the team need to let the guys go out and race and do what they know best.
Mark, you'd no doubt agree with that.
No, I do agree with that. But the problem is how you police that and how you really get to, act on it as you're out there in the heat of the moment. And that's the problem. You're in an environment which is emotionally driven, and you've got two individuals who are behind two very powerful cars at that point who want to go out there and prove themselves to be the best in the world. We're seeing that, but it unfortunately hasn't gone according to plan.
Well, things within the team are quiet today, and Ron Dennis is not giving any interviews, any comments at the moment at least. He's just absorbing all the events of yesterday. As for Lewis, this was his opinion of exactly what happened when he came up behind Alonso in the pit lane at the climax of qualifying yesterday.
It's always about being in control. And at the time, I came in, I was told that I'd be coming in behind Fernando, so just slow down a bit. So I cruised, and then I sort of stopped and I put it into neutral. The lollipop went up, so I was about to go, and then I was sort of waiting for a little bit longer. And you have to stay composed. If you let it get to you, then you're stuffed. I just thought at the beginning, I didn't know what was going on. I was like, wow, this is I lost like half a minute or something, and so all my time is gone. I thought, okay, if I push around, I'll still make it to do a lap. And I got round, and the lights went red, and that was it. My opportunity was gone. But still, I got second.
Yeah.
On heavier at the time. Obviously, he did it with the lighter car at the end, and I did it with the heavier car earlier on. So, just shows the pace that we had.
So in a team context now, and in a World Championship context for Lewis Hamilton, how does this change things for him, his approach to the rest of the season?
Well, I think that there's going to have to be some discussions about how they go forward in the other competitions. But right now, today, what we have is a situation where Alonso is hampered. He's got to fight his way through traffic. Lewis definitely has an advantage, and he's got a chance today of extending his championship lead.
You would assume, Mark, that Fernando has been trying to exert his authority within the team. That's been one of the problems and one of the challenges for Ron Dennis.
Yeah, but, Ron Dennis has dealt with this before with a Senna and a Prost put together in the team. He's had some great drivers over the years. He knows how to handle these guys. But, for me today, I think it's an unfair situation to see Alonso penalised and put back to 6th on the grid. I think it's unfair on the World Championship. And I just don't believe that the punishment fits the crime.
But it does give Lewis a wonderful opportunity to consolidate his World Championship lead today, especially with what's happening to Ferrari. Extraordinary problem for Felipe Massa yesterday.
But, an unusual situation with Ferrari, making some mistakes. It looks like they actually didn't put enough fuel in his car, and he actually broke down, had to pull him back again and reset the whole situation. We don't expect to see that from Ferrari, and very rarely do we see that. But very costly to Massa. He's got a very long race in on his hands today.
And also, Damon, the BMWs continue their excellent form. We've got Nick Heidfeld qualifying ahead of Kimi Räikkönen. But on a circuit like this, that's absolutely crucial.
Yes, qualifying, it gives you an opportunity to dictate the strategy. But I mean, all the other stuff that's been going on has overshadowed a brilliant performance there by Nick Heidfeld. Now he's on the front row, so fantastic.
Okay, Damon, thanks very much. We look forward to hearing from you in the commentary box. We'll have a lot more, of course, on the controversy surrounding McLaren and Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso during the rest of our build-up. This is the story, though, that dominates our build-up today. Still to come, though, we got the ITV F1 competition. We'll hear from Jenson Button as well. But with all the changes that took place from the stewards' room last night, let's take you through this Hungarian Grand Prix grid in some detail. Lewis Hamilton, of course, promoted to pole position. Nick Heidfeld moves on to the front row. The BMW breaking the front row domination of McLaren and Ferrari. Räikkönen and Rosberg on row 2. Alonso moved back to 6th with Ralf Schumacher, then Kubica and Trulli. Mark Webber out qualifying his Red Bull teammate David Coulthard once again, but they're both in the top 10. Then come Kovalainen and Wirtz, the stewards moving Fisichella back to 13th, and Massa in the 14th spot from where Jenson Button won last year. Good qualifying performance from Anthony Davidson. Bad day for Honda with Button and Barrichello failing to come through first qualifying. Sato and Vettel, Sutil and Yamamoto. complete the grid?
I think we have a very good chance. As you say, Felipe hopefully shouldn't be a problem, but Kimi could be an issue. I hope that I will have a good start like we usually do. As we all know, it's very difficult to overtake here, and yeah, no mistakes, and hopefully have a good strategy.
I think it's just our car also that seems to work better on these tracks like Hungary and Monaco relative to other people. Just need to try and get it right for the other tracks now.
Nearly have picked up pace compared to the people around us, but it has been very tight today, and the circuit is very difficult really to drive. It's very difficult to get a clean lap in, which happened to, in my qualifying lap.
Pleased with your result?
Not really. We have this morning problem, and also in qualifying, so I was losing a lot of speed and acceleration, and yeah, that's all.
And a look at the Drivers' Championship just serves to underline why the Hamilton-Alonso rivalry has become so intense. Hamilton's lead down to 2. Felipe Massa is the next closest challenger, but he's way down the grid today. Raikkonen starts behind the BMW of Heidfeld. So it really is a great chance for Hamilton to build his World Championship lead. That's not quite the case in the Constructors' Championship, where McLaren have a decent lead over Ferrari, but subject to an appeal to the stewards, they're prevented from adding to that points total at this Hungarian Grand Prix. Well, this race in Hungary is well established on the Formula One calendar. It's very much the hub of the European season. We're in the geographical heart of Europe, and this is maybe the most international crowd that Formula One attracts. Louise Goodman now looks at the particular character of this Hungarian Grand Prix.
This has always been a popular race with Finnish Formula One fans. Hungary shares a common heritage with Finland, so it's the next best thing to a home Grand Prix for the Raikkonen Rat Pack. But this year they are vastly outnumbered. An estimated 20,000 people have made the journey from Poland to cheer on Robert Kubica.
I'm from Poland.
We are come from Poland.
Honestly speaking, when you drive really quick, you don't see them because you are concentrated on your job. But it's also nice after qualifying or before on the installation lap to see so many people to wave, and I'm very, very happy that they are here.
It's not just Polish flags fluttering in the breeze, though. The Hungarian Grand Prix is a truly multinational affair.
Finland.
We come from Austria, Steiermark, Styria.
I'm Melbourne, Australia. From Romania.
I come from Kazakhstan.
Well, I live in Manchester, but I'm from Glasgow originally.
Ya soy de España, de Madrid.
Hungary! Ami Takuma! Takuma!
Sato's countryman Sakon Yamamoto is making a return to Formula One this weekend. The 25-year-old and his sponsorship millions have been snapped up by Spiker for the remainder of the season. Yamamoto contested 7 races with Super Aguri last year. And BMW Sauber tester Sebastian Vettel has walked into a race seat at Toro Rosso after Scott Speed was sacked by the team earlier this week. The strained relations between the Californian and his bosses reached breaking point after a disagreement at the European Grand Prix. Vettel drove his new car for the very first time on Friday morning.
And there's a lot to learn, a lot of new situations. You know, you can feel the car feels completely different with high fuel, low fuel, and you just have to learn how the car reacts in all these situations. But overall, I think we enjoy it so far.
And finally, the FIA has released the 2008 calendar. The French Grand Prix makes an unexpected appearance amongst the 18 races, and there are 2 new circuits to look forward to. The European Grand Prix will be held at Valencia, while Singapore looks set to be Formula One's first ever night race.
Well, Hungary keeps its place in the first week of August, and we've got August sunshine here today. Mark, how do you read race conditions?
Actually, conditions are very good. It's not as hot as what it normally is here, and Hungary is normally one of those punishing races, but it is a bit of a dust bowl, Steve, and it can get you can get problematic for the guys that they get offline, but generally produces a very good race.
And it's all a bit of a contrast with a year ago. We saw how the arrival of rain really upset the form book at the Nürburgring 2 weeks ago. Well, here a year ago it was heavy rain around the circuit that enabled Jenson Button to come from 14th on the grid for an all-important breakthrough victory, which was meant in many ways to relaunch Jenson Button's career.
Here in his 113th Grand Prix start, he's proved the critics wrong. They said he might never win a Grand Prix. He's done it! Jenson Button wins the Hungarian Grand Prix. Get in there!
Jensen, you would like to think that coming back to a place like this will produce no end of positive vibes, but the evidence of qualifying suggests otherwise.
Yeah, you know, coming here we knew that we weren't going to have a fantastic qualifying, but we're hoping for a bit more than, you know, being 17th and 18th. But over this weekend we realised that we're really not that quick here. A lot of our issue here is that we just don't have a efficient enough downforce. That seems to be the issue.
Well, what is your outstanding memory of a year ago, and with hindsight, what has it actually done for you?
I think winning my first race was an amazing feeling. Obviously it is for everyone. But the feeling that I get now is it's like I'm so happy that I have won my first race, because things are so tough at the moment, and it's nice to have that in the back of my mind, knowing that I've won a race. And it's nice to come back here because it is a very special place for me, but in a very different situation. Yeah.
Despite the problems with the car and so on, you feel comfortable that your own ability is still really at its height. You proved that to a certain extent at Nürburgring, albeit for a very brief
2 laps.
time.
It'd be nice to do the whole race, but no, Nürburgring was a great race, and you know, coming through and spinning off the circuit in 4th position after 2 laps, after starting 17th, was pretty amazing. You know, it was a great couple of laps. I love the wet and I love those conditions, and it's the only chance that, you know, in this sort of car, you know, 2/3 of the way back the field, it's the only time that we can make a difference, and I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully it'll be wet like Nürburgring, like Hungary last year, and I'll have a great race. But if we do have a great race, we've got to make sure that we don't forget we're still in a car that isn't competitive.
Because do any self-doubts ever emerge that you can still do it, you've still got the ability?
No, definitely not. Never.
It'd be great to see Jensen Button back on the top step of the podium one day soon, but it's back to the politics, and we've got an opportunity to talk to Jean Todt here at Ferrari. Locked in a battle of some intensity with McLaren, the spying scandal, as it's been termed. How do you read what happened in Paris last week, and how do you react to the decision that was made there?
No, I think it's simply, we have seen the way the Italian National Sporting Authority has reacted, and the president of the FIA has decided to put that in front of the International Court of Appeal, and I feel it is the right decision, because if a team is declared guilty, then you cannot get out without being penalized.
What do you expect to happen at that appeal? What new evidence do you intend to bring, and what penalties might be imposed, do you feel?
I think, you know, it would be completely inappropriate at this time to make any kind of speculation. The only thing is that it's important that we are able to present properly what has happened, and then it will be up to the Court of Appeal to decide.
It is always great to see McLaren battling against Ferrari at the head of the field, but this political battle, what potential damage do you feel it might do to the sport?
I mean, I'm very unhappy about that, very sad, because if things would been run properly, it will never have happened. So we have a victim of something which should have never been happening.
Quick word on events of yesterday. First of all, from the Ferrari point of view, not the best of luck for Felipe Massa yesterday.
No, definitely, you know, but he just did not do very good qualifying lap in the second part of qualifying, and then it was a problem of communication between the pit and the garage, so the consequence that he could not go in the Q3 and end up 14th, unfortunately.
And do you have any reaction to what happened to Fernando Alonso in the steward's room later?
Honestly, I'm more concentrated on what is happening in our team, and it's more appropriate, so.
I understand that. We wish you the best today. Jean Todt, thank you very much indeed. We're all set for the cars to come out in just a few minutes' time, but first of all, our feature where you can put your own questions to Mark Blundell. It's Question Mark.
This week's question comes from Andrew Wilson of North Wales. He asked, do any of the drivers have superstitions? David, they understand that you wear the same pants time and time again?
I used to, you know, that's clear. When I was karting, I had the same underpants because they were comfortable, but I now use and a bit of promotion here for an Australian company. There's a company called Underdax who make hole-proof underpants, which is very important for a racing driver, as you know, and I have about 50 pairs of those, and they get cycled around through the test team and the race team.
I had plenty, and then I kept on doing well without doing that, and then I just forgot them.
I have a specific routine that I start before the race, and I'm not happy if I don't have the time to do that, so maybe I'm a bit superstitious there.
I realized myself that it's not just about an underpants or something that we do before a race that it will change our results. We have to be focused, you know, just luck comes when it wants, and it's part of the game.
I was never a driver with many superstitions, but I did like routine. I always used to get in from the right side of the car. I felt that was lucky for me, and I needed all the luck I could get with some of the cars I drove.
And fingers crossed, you can contact Mark via the ITV F1 website, itv-f1.com, and that's where you can also confirm details about our competitions, and Ted Kravitz has details of the latest prize on offer.
We've a fabulous competition prize for you thanks to AT&T Williams sponsor, the Royal Bank of Scotland. It's a trip for two to the Italian Grand Prix on the 9th of September. You'll have 2 weekend tickets to the race in Monza, with seats in the heart of the action in the central grandstand, 4 nights accommodation in the 4-star Hotel de la Ville in Milan, return flights and all your transfers. Also included is a tour of the AT&T Williams garage from 3-time Formula 1 World Champion and RBS Global Ambassador Sir Jackie Stewart. Here's the great man now.
For your chance to win a trip to the Italian Grand Prix, all you have to do is answer this question. What nationality is Alex Watts? A, French, B, Spanish, or C, Austrian?
Thank you, Sir Jackie. So the number to call 0901 293 2020 or text F1 plus A, B or C to 63337. Calls cost £1 per entry from a BT landline. Calls from other networks and mobiles may be higher. Text will also cost £1 plus the standard network rate. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines will close 6 p.m. Tuesday 21st of August when satellite viewers can press the red button.
Good luck with that. Meantime, this is the scene within the McLaren garage. Ron Dennis eager to concentrate on the race instead of the politics. Lewis Hamilton getting set to head out to pole position. What do you reckon, Mark, is the atmosphere in there?
I think it's a little bit tense, as you imagine. And it's been a difficult 48 hours as such for everybody involved in the team to understand what's gone on to a certain degree. And at this point also they're having to deal with a certain amount of things, that being Alonso moved back and also no points being scored in the Constructors' Championship today for the team.
Hungarian Grand Prix comes as a welcome relief to us all. It took quite a few hours last night to decide how this grid for the Hungarian Grand Prix should line up. But the grid is forming now with Lewis Hamilton on the pole position, and we'll be down there with thoughts on the prospects and the politics as well in just a few minutes. Welcome to the Hungaroring. We're 8 miles outside Budapest and the grid is forming for the Hungarian Grand Prix, and rarely in this sport has the rivalry and competitive edge been quite so intense as ahead of this 11th round of the Formula 1 World Championship. McLaren versus Ferrari, and now within McLaren, Alonso versus Hamilton. If you're just joining our coverage, the overnight news is that the stewards have relegated Alonso from pole position down to 6th on the grid after being judged to have blocked Hamilton in the pit lane, preventing him from putting in one last hot qualifying lap. Hamilton moves up to pole. And right through our build-up, we've been hearing his thoughts on the controversy, and now his thoughts on his teammate Alonso and whether his respect for the world champion has diminished after the events of yesterday.
I wouldn't say it's diminished. I mean, I still respect him because obviously coming into Formula 1, I've always been looking up at the world champions, the people that have done it, doing what I want to do, and I'm sitting next to the 2-time world champion, so I admire him for what he's done. I don't particularly think he has a great excuse for what happened today, and sort of that tends to lead to certain things, but I just have to, you know, just let it go over my head. I've got a race to do tomorrow.
There's an extraordinary competitive edge now between the two of you within the team. Is this something that's been building for a while and has just sort of reach the climax this weekend?
Possibly. I mean, it's... First of all, no one expected, not even myself, expected to be this as competitive as I am. No one expected me to be leading the World Championship for as long as I have been, let alone leading it. And no one expected me to have the World Champion sort of chasing me, trying to catch up. When things get tough and lots of different things come into it, I think about, there's a film that I really like, Cool Runnings. I don't know if anyone...
Yeah, the Jamaican bobsleigh, yeah.
But there's a song called Rise Above It. Yeah. And I watch it a lot. I watch it maybe once a month, and I watch it. It's one of my favourite films. And so Rise Above It, you know, it's really rise above it. Just rise above whatever is out there and get on with what you're doing.
You said at the Nürburgring you probably learned more in that weekend of Formula One than in any other. What do you feel you've learned from today in particular then?
You sort of learn what can happen in motorsport, who you can trust, who you can't, whether you believe people or whether you don't. And there's so much politics going around. It's really easy for that politics to affect you and your job. And the most important thing for me is just to focus on my job. And that's getting in the car, enjoying what I'm doing, keep a smile on my face and keep pushing. And you know, as I always say, never give up. That's my motto.
He has got a fantastic attitude, Mark, but that attitude and that composure is going to be tested to the limit over the next few months, isn't it?
Very much so, and I think you know, there's a great expression what flies around the F1 world, and that's welcome to the Piranha Club. And I think, you know, Lewis is just finding out, you know, in his own way now, that not everything maybe is what it seems, and it's just a tough world. It's a tough environment, and I feel for him in many ways. He's a young guy. He's come in. He's done more than anybody expected, even himself. And all of a sudden he's involved in a battle for the World Championship, and that battle will be the hardest one of his life.
Well, he will have respect for his World Champion teammate, but he's justified in maybe losing just a little bit of that respect and certainly that trust after the events of yesterday. But what of Fernando Alonso? No one really knows him better on that grid than Renault's Pat Simmons, and he's talking with Ted right now.
Well, Pat, we all learnt a lot from McLaren and interesting ways that they run qualifying yesterday. First of all, what did you think of the way Lewis disregarded the instruction from the team?
Well, it's difficult to comment on these things without knowing all the details. I think Lewis probably felt a bit threatened. There was a Ferrari behind him. He thought he might lose place to that. But it's wrong to ask me, really. I'm not in possession of all the facts.
What I wanted to ask you then was about Fernando. You know him well. The stewards seem to intimate that he did it deliberately. Do you think that's the case?
I think there was a bit of gamesmanship in it, yeah. I think that, you know, you've got to remember that these are very competitive people. You know, they've got to use gamesmanship. They've got to go for it.
Thanks, Pat.
A bit of gamesmanship, says Pat Simmons. What's that code for within the world of Formula One?
It's exactly what he says it is, and it's just creating that psychological barrier, and it's laying down the marker. I'm number one in the team, and I think that's exactly what Alonso is trying to make sure everybody understands and appreciates. And I don't know. I think it backfired slightly. It was a little bit too blatant, a little bit too public.
Well, everyone needs to cool down a bit in the world of Formula One at the moment. That's the water park that's just about half a mile away from this Hungaroring, and a lot of the drivers and quite a few of the spectators have been cooling off there during the course of the last few days. Temperatures up around the 30 mark. It is pretty warm, and we're looking forward to an absolutely fascinating race. It's not one long straight. It's a very tight, twisty Hungaroring that these drivers face. And back down the grid on row 5, David Coulthard has qualified just behind his Red Bull teammate Mark Webber, and we can hear from David.
Well, David, it was a very positive result for the team last time out at the Nürburgring, and not a bad result so far here either.
Yeah, checker flag is where you count the results, so obviously we benefited from Fisichella penalty. On one hand, we're a little bit, 8 metres closer to the first corner, but I'm on the dirty side of the track. Historically, the information would suggest that that's not a good place to be. So I've got real pressure from Kovalainen on my outside, and beyond that, we're just going to run a race. I could, of course, choose my fuel strategy, even though I'm starting 10th, and we've gone a little bit different to the guys in front, because after, sort of Mark, then the others have probably got, maybe the Toyotas are similar pace to us, but the others have clearly got a pace advantage.
Should we be keeping an eye on this first corner?
We should indeed, yeah, I will be.
I mean, is it quite a tricky for everyone to get through? Are we likely to see?
It is very tight, and obviously because it's so dusty on the inside, gets cleaned up a little bit with the GP2 and the Porsche Super Cup and things like that, but nonetheless it's one of the more tricky first corners.
Cheers, see you later.
It's pretty warm down on that grid, and the crowd sweltering in the heat, which is rising all the time. Flavio Briatore, who has something to say about just about all the political events that go on within Formula One, he's down on the grid as well. No Martin Brundle with us this week. Damon Hill filling in for him, and Damon is up in the commentary box. No grid walk from Damon, and that's not a bad decision from you, Damon. And alongside James Allen and in position already. What sort of memories does this circuit bring back for you, Damon, your breakthrough win here?
Well, of course, that was very, very important for me, and I like this track. But I think that as most of the memories that I'm getting from coming to the Grand Prix here are about Formula One and the complicated world in which it is. It's not a straightforward sport by any means. I think Lewis's conduct is just incredible, and he continues to delight me and inspire me. I think he's dealt with this very difficult situation very well, but he is competitive. You know, he may actually be that Alonso is just rattled by this, and he's overstepped the mark a little bit.
And James, in terms of the limited opportunities for overtaking here in Hungary, it's probably second only to Monaco in that respect. What sort of a race do you think we're in for? What can we expect from Lewis Hamilton?
I always feel that if you want to overtake, you can, however tight the circuit is. Alonso, we're sure, will definitely come through the track. And this morning in the GP2 race, Steve, we did see an awful lot of overtaking, so it's definitely possible around here.
Okay, thanks, fellas. Back down on the grid. We're with Anthony Davidson, I believe, who qualified pretty well yesterday. Let's get the thoughts of Anthony.
Anthony, good qualifying, out-qualified Taku again. How are you looking for the race?
Yeah, pretty good, I think. We had some good long runs on the Friday, and noticed some different strategies going on already. I saw Massa cruising around onto the grid, obviously trying to save fuel, as well as Fisichella and Kovalainen, so that was quite surprising to see. So yeah, I think no matter what their strategy is, they're going to do a better start than me, and also be quicker in the race. So I really just got to hold position, I think, and then I think that let the race come to me. Should be all right, I think.
Okay. Well, have a good one. We're asking everybody in the paddock what they make of the gamesmanship at McLaren. Any views? You must have watched that.
Yeah, it's right. It's an internal problem, isn't it? I don't see why anything should have really been done apart from their side. That was obviously a problem within the team, and you know, that should be addressed by the team. I feel it's a little bit unfair what happened, maybe. So you know, it's quite a pure sport. So you know, I'm in a slow car, I'm near the back. They're both in fast cars, they should be at the front.
Have a good one, thank you.
Well, I'm down on the grid now with Ron Dennis. Ron, obviously been a very difficult weekend for the team so far. First of all, your response to the penalties that were issued yesterday.
Everything that came out of yesterday is just linked to our commitment to equality. It is so extremely challenging to convince drivers that they've got equal equipment and that we operate to the best of our ability, not favouring one or the other. Yesterday was very, very challenging. There is no real innocent party in some aspects of the team, but from the perception of did we do anything that was not consistent with our efforts to be equal and even-handed, most certainly not.
So you say no innocent party. Does that mean that you accept there is some guilt?
Well, clearly, when things don't go as you plan, there's a reason, and I don't think guilt is the right word. I think if the plans that we put in place were properly executed, then we'd have both cars on the front row of the grid comfortably, and we would be not faced with the loss of constructors' points. And that's, you know, there was no other team involved in this. This was it was our team that put itself in that position, and at the end of the day, we you know, we will consider carefully after the weekend the best way forward.
Thanks very much, Ron.
And what with the political battle that's being raged against Ferrari from the McLaren point of view, this is the last thing that Ron Dennis needed this weekend.
Yeah, he really didn't need this to happen. And you know, when you listen to Ron there, obviously there's procedures what have been set. Certain individuals and members have not taken those procedures to the end, and consequently we've got the outcome, and he understands it. I'm not sure that he's agreeable to it, but you know, that's what they've got to deal with. And as we are now, Steve, the race is the most important factor. He knows that, and they will focus when they get back and regroup at the factory and get on and try and make sure it never happens again.
Anthony Davidson, we heard a few minutes ago, putting forward an opinion that we've been hearing quite a bit up and down the pit lane this morning, that this is an internal McLaren matter. It didn't need the stewards to intervene.
You know, I agree with that. I really do. I don't feel that anybody else was impeded. I don't think there was any situation where another competitor was hampered. It was just purely between the two team members driving the same car. An internal issue that could have been sorted out. Yes, it wasn't. It didn't look good, but at the same point, you know, I don't think the punishment should be what it is.
Mercedes-Benz, Norbert Haug deep in discussion there. Robert Kubica, who will start in the second BMW from row 4. On row 6, there's Heikki Kovalainen. Let's get a quick thought from him as we see Lewis taking his place.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Down here with a very bubbly Heikki Kovalainen. Great qualifying performance by you. Strong race in Stork.
What do you mean, great qualifying? P12, and then when Fisi got a penalty, P11. That's a disaster, but we cannot do anything about it at the moment, so we have to look just forward, try to overtake as many cars as possible, and I think we can do it. I think we can score points today, and you know, I'm certainly not giving up. I'm gonna attack everything already at the start and just keep it going like that all the way through the race, and then see where we end up.
Okay, stay positive. Thanks very much.
As always.
Let's start concentrating now precisely, Mark, on what might happen off the start line, in particular as it involves Lewis Hamilton, who, when he thought he was on the front row alongside Fernando Alonso yesterday evening, was really relishing this run down to the first corner.
I'm sure he was, because you know what had gone on over the last day or so. There was a little bit of you know, friction and maybe some situation where they could have evened it out into turn 1. Now he has to contend with a BMW alongside him. I think he's quite confident in knowing that his car will get off the grid there and be first place into turn 1, and he's going to, you know, go off into the distance. If McLaren is superior in terms of performance compared to everybody else. What I would like to see is this man here, Fernando Alonso, you know, have an equal fight with him, just to see who is the man who comes out on top at the end of this race. But let's watch. This guy, Fernando Alonso, had an extremely great race in a Renault not so long ago, and he's a quick guy around this circuit in particular.
But on a couple of occasions this season already, he's shown a certain lack of composure when the pressure's been on, which has been surprising.
Yeah, I think now and again there's been a couple of little errors, but you know, that's the makeup of the guy. He gives 100% commitment.
Swiftly to Louise, who's got Anthony Hamilton.
Anthony, just tell us about Lewis's mood. How's he taken everything? How's it affected him?
Actually, he's in a really very good mood, Lewis. I mean, you know, had a good qualifying yesterday, good practice on Friday, and he's feeling quite good today. So, fingers crossed we have a good race.
Thanks, Anthony.
2 weeks ago it was Lewis's big crash at the Nürburgring. Now it's the actions of the stewards and his teammate Alonso that has moved him onto pole position. It's not a dull week in the life of Lewis Hamilton. What an eventful few months. The atmosphere might be strained within the team, but Hamilton has a great chance to boost his World Championship lead in this Hungarian Grand Prix, which is just a few minutes away.